Hey guys and gals, Malkuth1974 back at you with another tutorial. You guys have been asking for it. I'm going to teach you how to get to space in Kerbal Space Program 1.0 with an SSTO. And I'm not going to lie to you, I don't really like single stage to orbit vessels. I'm a rocket guy myself. So doing this took me a little bit to get the hang of it. And I can tell you right now that even if you copy me exactly, you're going to still have to tweak a few things here and there. So let's take a look at the actual vessel I'm using. I'm using the Mark II cockpit. I got some Mark II rocket fuel fuselage on there. I got another one back here, a Mark II rocket fuel fuselage over there. I have a FLT 800. I guess it was an FTLT 800 I was calling. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I got two of them over there. Those are housing my JX4 Whiplash turbo ramjets. And in the center, I have an LV-T30 Reliant liquid fuel engine. This is the one that does not have gimbal. So basically how this works is these engines get me up to a certain height that I need to get to and a certain speed, and this finishes it off by getting me into actual orbit and getting me out of orbit, and then you glide back to Kerbal Space Center and you land. This is why I really don't like single stage to orbit vessels, because you don't really have a whole lot of fuel left by the time you get into orbit. But I have managed to get this into orbit and a few others, and like I said, every vessel is going to be a little bit different, and you're going to have to tweak it here and there, and you're going to have to adjust the way I launch and the way you launch, but I'll get you in the general vicinity of how to do it correctly, plus return to Kerbin safely and land. One of the important things you're going to have to do in Kerbal Space Program is install these why is it called elevons? Whatever. Elevons. And how these work is that you have what's called pitch, yaw, and roll. And the way I've set up this vessel is I got 4 of them on this winglet right here, and these are all set to active, 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 which means that is what they'll do. They'll do pitch, yaw, and roll. Up here I have another couple of winglets, and this is set to pitch, inactive, yaw, active, roll, inactive, normal, normal. That means that these will only affect yaw when I actually need to do anything. And this winglet is actually set up to do pitch, yaw, and roll too. It's just a little extra to get me some more control over everything. The next important thing is I highly suggest installing Kerbal Engineer, for you can see what your TWR is. It seems to me that to get an STO or SSTO into space, TWR is the most important thing. I have tried this many different ways. I've added more fuel but less TWR and can't get this to space. I've done less fuel and more TWR and still not gotten into space. And I have tried this. This can get me to space. What this means is that these two rocket engines are going to produce 1.62 TWR. That means these things will cook you in low orbit. Not lower, but low altitudes, and we'll talk about that once we actually launch the vessel. And this is the important one. If you don't have a high, this is kind of low. It's still kind of low. It's not very good, but it's the most, it's the best engine I have in this game. Now, I am using the ramjet and this is classic Kerbal Space Program engines. There also are some engines, what are the hell they called? We'll have to go look at them. Let me save this for a second. I don't actually have them. I'm actually in my Apollo mission game. But if we go all the way over here, I believe they are... Yeah, they're right here. So the Rapier engines are a lot easier to get to space than this right here. So I'm actually kind of in hard mode right now, trying to use these engines and this system to get to space. The Rapiers, they're not as efficient, but they generally get you into space because you're saving weight, and that's extremely important when it comes to an SSTO like this. Another thing you'll have to tweak on your own when you make your vessel is that I have gone in and taken out some oxidizer in the FLT 800s. That's because these engines only use liquid fuel. They do not use oxidizer. So I do not need a full load of oxidizer to make this vessel work right. So I have tweaked it here and there. I've flown it. I've watched it. It's still not 100% right now, but the basic premise is by the time I get into orbit and out of orbit, I want the oxidizer and the liquid fuel to be about even. Now this completely is dependent on how you control everything, how you fly, how you do everything. So, that's how that works. Anything else? Oh, I do have installed air brakes. You need the air brakes for when you are coming back in, you don't burn up on your re-entry. And I thought there was something important I had to talk about, but there's no thrust limiters on these. They're all full speed, and everything's good. I got RCS on here. I do have a docking port under it. I take it that if you got this into space, you'd want to have some sort of space station up in space in low orbit altitude or something rather than that, or whatever you have, whatever you're using these for, where it can refuel and you can go on with its mission. Because trust me, getting out of Kerbal orbit is going to use up most of its fuel. Anything else? Okay, so let's go over how I have the action group set up. So every engine has its own action group, and so doesn't the intakes. If you look at custom 1, which is 1 on my keypad, that controls these engines right here. I can't even think about it right now. Okay, so the turbo ramjets, 1 key controls that, turns it on and off. The 2 key controls the LVT30 Reliant. The 3 key controls the circular intake. You want to shut those off once your turbo ramjets are off. So basically you press 1 and 2, or 1, 2, in my case I press 1, fired up the engine, and then press 3 to shut these off. And I have 4 set to my air brake. So we'll take another look at that. 1, engine, 3. Hey, where did they all go? Now I've noticed that sometimes my stuff doesn't seem to save. So we'll do it again. We'll set it up the way we want it. So custom 3 is for the air intakes, and custom 4 is for the air brakes. So let's see, make sure we got all that right. Yeah, everything's good. That way I can control everything with the keyboard, and I don't have to mess with staging or anything else. I did separate them in staging just for I can get some readings on Kerbal Engineer. So here we go. Let's actually launch and get this thing under the way. Now again, you're gonna have to tweak your planes yourself a lot. I mean, it's going to take you a few tries to get to space. You're not going to do it on the first try. It's just you gotta know what to look for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my speed all the way up with the shift key all the way up, and then in my case I'm going to start my my turbo ramjet engines with the 1 key. They're going to start right up right away. And I already know that this vessel can take off at a surface speed of about 50 to 60, so I'm going to get that going. I'm going to raise my landing gear, and I'm going to reduce my speed to 3/4. Now the reason I do that is because you do not want to be going fast in a low orbit, a low altitude, or you'll explode. I'm also going to bring my vessel up to about the 30-degree mark, or the 30-degree angle of attack. That is I found for my vessel, it's a very good climbing rate for, sorry, I don't know the actual terms for all this stuff, but it's a pretty good climbing rate for my particular vessel, and it helps slow my vessel down for I'm not speeding through the atmosphere. You do not want to have Mach effects or heat effects on your vessel, or you risk blowing up or just completely disintegrating. Now my rule of thumb is that at 6,000 meters, I'm going to basically start pumping up my throttle until I get to 10,000 meters. At 10,000 meters, I want to be at full throttle. I'm going to raise this just a tad because that is important. Here we're going to the 6,000 mark up here. So I'm going to raise my engines a little bit. And I'm pretty sure I can get away with just going to full speed right now and won't have any issues. This is something you're going to have to mess with. I think where a lot of people are failing is that their craft is exploding on low altitudes, and you don't want to do that. You obviously don't want to be messing around with that. You don't want Mach effects, and you don't want heat effects as much as possible. Once we get closer to escaping Kerbal, the atmosphere, we'll start getting some heat effects, but it'll be fine by then. So now I'm at 10,000 feet. And if we're looking up here, my Periapsis height, this is Kerbal Engineered. This is hard to tell with anything else. You can see I'm climbing very fast. I'm also having some Mach effects, but I've seen this before. It's fine. They're kind of tapering off. Just as long as they taper off, you don't have any issues. But see how my Periapsis is climbing? So now I'm at 21,000, but my altitude is at 16. You want to get to about 26,000 for your Periapsis height before you start leveling out. I have found it's about the easiest way. And if we go over here, we can see the intake, my air. I still have plenty of air. I'm at 26,000. Now I want to start leveling out to about 20 on this. It gets a little jiggly, but just keep with it. One thing we want to watch is that once our speed starts to go down like it is now and we're not climbing anymore, I am kind of climbing. I still got plenty of air. You can see how high I've gotten. So there we go. What I did is I shut off my my engines. I shut off the air intakes and I turned this engine on. Now I am trying to gain speed and gain altitude at the same time. So the Periapsis height is actually, you can, if you don't have Kerbal Engineer, you can see that from out here. Right there, you just kind of click on it. That's what makes Kerbal Engineer so much better. You have it right with you at all times. I'm looking at my liquid fuel and my oxidizer, and I actually did a pretty good job this time with deciding where I am. We're doing pretty well on everything. I want to get this down a little bit. I'm talking too much, so I'm missing a few key points here, but I should have probably pre-recorded this or something. But we want to get our surface speed up to 2200. That is how we get into orbit. And this is where we're at 32,000 feet right now, 32,000 meters. I can start dropping a little bit my my angle of attack because we want to gain the speed as quick as possible before we run out of liquid fuel. So I'm going to get this all going. You guys can pay attention to how I do it, and hopefully this will help you get into space a little bit. As you can see, my Periapsis height is still, kind of right there. My liquid fuel is kind of getting low, but I have actually gotten back to Kerbal with only about 54 liquid fuel left, so it's not too much of an issue if I use a lot of it. We just want to make sure that our surface speed gets to 2200, which will basically skyrocket us into about a 78,000 meter orbit. I'm actually doing very good. This is actually going to be a very good orbit, I think. I'm already at 17,000, 36, 30, 18. My fuel is doing great. I'm watching it right here. We're at 18, so yeah, we're soon gonna climb into a higher. This number will start skyrocketing. It's already skyrocketing a little bit. I'm getting ready to push the X key because once we hit 78,000 meters, I'm gonna push the X key. Everything's still doing good over there. We're at 55, 56, 60. Here we go. We're gonna get into 78. So there we go. So now I am in what I've talked about in my last video, is a suborbital trajectory or suborbital flight. Basically, I cannot complete an orbit of Kerbal without getting to the AP and increasing it. Now, if you look at, I just noticed that, if you look at my Periapsis height, I am kind of falling still out of thing. If you notice that this is happening, you need to correct it a little bit. Just raise it a little bit. Give yourself a little. I got plenty of fuel, so it's not a big issue. I'm going to get it back to 78. I'm kind of glad that happened on this one, for you guys can see it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put my crosshair on the prograde marker there. That'll help a little bit. Another thing I want you to notice is that I took such a small angle of attack on my way up when I launched my rockets for one reason only. Well, actually it's two reasons. Two reasons to gain the speed. And the next reason is I want to get my Periapsis height as as close to where I want it as possible, because you don't want it to have a very long burn when you want to conduct your orbit. Right now, this is perfect. It's probably the best I've ever done so far, so that's good. And what I mean by the Periapsis height, you cannot see this if you don't have Kerbal Engineer installed. If you don't have Kerbal Engineer installed, you just have to keep going to the map view and checking out what's your apoapsis height. You just click on that little dot and it says 77, that's fine. What we're going to end up doing is once we get there, we're going to circularize our orbit and we'll be in orbit, which will be great. I still have plenty of liquid fuel left. I mean, I have a huge, that's pretty good for an SSTO. If I had something in orbit where it could help me refuel, then this thing could go to the moon. It really could. It's not all that impossible. It's just that I don't have anything like that in orbit, so we can't do that. Okay. So here we go. We are at. And I'm sorry if this video is going to be long. I know I like to do quick tutorials, but unfortunately, getting one of these things into space isn't all that quick. I can do some cuts in here and there. I think that's what I'll do right now, is we need to get to the AP, so I'll be kind of quiet, and we'll get there. Be right back. As I am approaching my apoapsis point, I am not going to use a waypoint marker because I don't need to. But you guys can put one in there if you want. If you want to put a maneuver node in there, that's fine. We don't have all that much to go, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm just gonna wait a few seconds and then I'm gonna launch my engine here, or turn on my engine. I'm not gonna put it at full speed because I want to save or conserve fuel. So you don't really need to go to full speed. I'll probably go to a quarter right there. Or I guess that's a third actually, isn't it? Well, that's a half. Yeah, I guess so. Here we go. Now I'm watching my periapsis height. You can see it's rising right here, and we don't have all that much to go, as you can tell. And we're at 28, 40, 47, 50, 60, 70. Bang! There we go. 75, 81. So now we're in orbit. That is how you get an SSTO to orbit. Just remember the key points that I talked about. When you take off, you want to be going slow. You don't want to be going over 300 ms until you get to about 6,000 feet, and then you can crank up your engine. And as long as it's not got too much TWR in it, you'll be safe to 10,000. And then once you go over 10,000, you want to keep your angle of attack on about 30. For at this point, when you're hitting 10,000, what you're trying to raise is your apoapsis height as high as possible, and trying to raise your speed too. The higher your apoapsis height and your speed is when you shut your regular air-breathing engines off, the better chance you have of getting to orbit. And I have found that getting to at least an apoapsis of 26,000 meters is about the lowest point you can get to actually get into orbit and have enough fuel to conduct any kind of reasonable expedition that you might have with the STO. And once you get into orbit, once you understand everything and how it works, you can start designing vessels of purpose. This vessel right now doesn't have much of a purpose. It can get to space and it can take 2 Kerbals to space. You don't have any staging. You're only using fuel. It is good for a low Kerbal orbit type of system, but you have to come up with different ways of adding things, and hopefully this video will help you get there. So now we actually have to do the next hard part, and that's land back at Kerbal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this. I have to time accelerate until we get to what I always call Texas, and somebody else calls this Africa. So it does look like Africa now that I think about it. Yeah, it does. Texas and Africa. So I'll give you a few clues before we get there. If you get into space and you have a very low amount of liquid fuel left, you'll want to start your retrograde burn, or your burn back into the atmosphere, as far away from Kerbal, the actual base, as you can. The closer you are to the base, the more fuel you're going to have to use to get into a reasonable distance to the airfield when you actually start landing. So I'm going to actually start right about over here. It seems to be a pretty good way, and usually I come just over the mountains and I can land this way at the on the airbase. If I do it right about here and I have enough fuel, I could do it with this if I wanted to. I would most likely land after the base, and I would have to turn around. And I can still do that. You can glide. There's a way you can do it. I can't show you in this one. I'll show you the optimal approach to the airbase if I can actually do it. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. That's the thing about SSTOs. They are not perfect, and you have to be perfect every time to get it right. So, alright, I'll be back once I am positioned to start my retrograde burn. Folks, I am back. I am going to set my target reticle onto the retrograde marker. Again, that's the little circle there with an X in it, and it has the little 3 frangies there, thingies sitting out of there. I'm going to wait a little bit on this. Again, Kerbal Space Center is actually on this big island. You can tell it by the large island and the small chain of islands. It's directly across from the chain islands. And that little, it's like a little desert area there. It's actually grasslands, but this is grasslands. That's like a little desert area. Alright, so I am going to start my retrograde burn. We'll watch my fuel. You want to have a little bit of fuel in case you need it for your landing, for your actual air-breathing engine. So try not to use all your fuel up, but most of the time I can just glide there and land fine. So what I'm looking at right now is that I am not perfectly lined up with the Kerbal Space Center. I just know this by heart. You can see that my line marker is not totally there. So I'm going to actually go to the left of this a little bit. That will actually raise my marker a little bit. You can see it raising just a tad. Just want to make sure we're flying directly over the station, or right over this runway, and that should be good. And I am going to get me a little bit closer. Again, we don't want to go over it. I can go over it, but I don't really want to. So I'm going to set this up. I'm going to put it in between both of these islands, just like that. Might be a little bit off. There we go. So the whole premise now is that you need to turn your vessel around. You want to be facing the prograde marker. I'm at 72,000 meters. We're not actually in the atmosphere yet, but we're getting there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my target reticle is directly on the 90-degree mark, and I'm going to put that at about a 15-degree angle of attack, which we see right there. The next thing we're going to have to start worrying about now is that we're going to have to slow ourselves down, because what will happen to this vessel if we're going too fast in the Kerbin? It will explode. So that is why we have the air brakes. Now we're at 68,000 feet. I'm not too worried about the speed right now. So we're just going to kind of glide over Kerbin, kind of raise. You got to raise every once in a while. Just kind of bring it back down. It's not a big deal how you have your vessel. You just want the bottom facing the actual when you're re-entering, kind of like the shuttle does. I'm not sure if it matters or not, but I want to protect all these goodies up here. So even if these parts can take 2,000 degrees, these parts cannot, and I don't have any of those very precious goodies on this end. Even this is 2,000 degrees. I did check it out, so we're all set there. Alright, now we're at 60,000. We are in a small amount of atmosphere right now. If we look at my angle, I'm still coming over the Space Center and the runway, and it's going away a little bit once we actually really start hitting the atmosphere at about 35,000, and you would normally get a re-entry type burn. But every time I've done this, I have not seen a re-entry burn on this. I'm not quite sure why, but I'm pretty sure it's because of the air brakes, but we'll find out in a second. So I'm going to be kind of quiet, and I'm just going to kind of pay attention to this part because it's kind of important. You don't want to kill your Kerbals. If you're wondering what all that talking is, that is actually Chatterer. That's up here. I have that installed. I have Kerbal Engineer, and this is a new life support status by Rover Dude that he installed that I haven't quite got into using yet, but it's there. Checking it out, it's in there. It's pretty cool. Rover Dude's pretty cool. You guys, he's made a lot of the mining stuff, the mining aspect that you're playing in 1.0, and he has a lot of mods. The guy is really dedicated to this game. I swear, he's more dedicated than I am. I only have one mod, and that's Mission Controller. So that's all right. So now we're hitting about 30. So about 35,000. I'm gonna put my brakes on, and I should be able to hit 4. They better work. They better have saved this time. I'm gonna bring this back down to 15. Uh-oh. Alright, I'm gonna hit the brakes now. Well, that definitely seems to be an issue because they're not saving for whatever reason. So there we go. So this is going to start slowing me down. As you can see, my speed is actually dropping drastically, which is probably why we're not going to see any re-entry type heat issues at this point. Once I get to a certain, I am going to shut off this engine, so I'm going to press number 2, which works magically. I'm not sure why my other stuff is not saving. Are these off? Those are working. That's weird. Alright, we kind of getting a little bit crazy. Uh-oh, we don't want to spin. We don't want to spin. Uh-oh, we're spinning. Alright. Here we go. I'm going to actually try to save this a little bit by shutting these off. Yeah, one thing you don't want to do is touch anything when you're flying. So there you go. That was, if that was far, I would have totally died. So here we go. I'm going to redo it. Bring up my things. As you can see, it's going to cause us a lot of funky, dory, atmospheric, funny business going on. But we actually do want to sort of get down. Alright, so I'm just going to keep these off now, I guess. There we go. Luckily, we're still quite low, and I can save it. I might actually overpass it this time, which will be good for you because you can see how you can... No, I won't overpass it. I'm going to bring this down. Not quite sure why it was doing that. Oh, maybe because I should turn my air intakes back on because they are causing issues. Okay, so that's what I forgot to do. Let me see if that will help. Nope. Nope. Alright, so we'll keep those off for now. I am at 18,000, so I can turn on my air breathers again. I'm not going to use them, but we will get there. Now you see how easy it is to kind of save yourself from any kind of issues. That is what, because, you know, the atmospheric system, the aerodynamic system is pretty damn forgiving in Kerbal Space Program version 1.0. So you shouldn't have all that many issues with it. Are those air breathers on? Nope, yep they are. Alright, so now I want to kind of raise this a little bit. Raise it. Bring it up. We're going to keep gliding, or I'm going to have to start the engines. We don't want to start the engines. The engines are started, but I don't want to use the engines. I haven't had to use them yet. So this is where I kind of flubbed it a little bit coming in. Even I can mess this stuff up. I've done more actual getting into orbit practices than I've actually landed practices, but we got this. We can do this. It's just you got to keep control of your vessel and everything will be great. It'll be hunky-dory, as they say somewhere that I've never been. Alright. You can tell I still have plenty of liquid fuel left, plenty of oxidizer left. If I was to actually turn these engines on, we would be pretty dang peachy. Peachy peen. There we go. I can't believe I'm teaching you guys how to land and I flubbed it up a little bit. I saved it though. I showed you how to save it. That was the plan. That was the plan. That was the plan. Okay, I'm not going to promise because then I'd be lying. So there is the Space Center. There is the runway. I'm still a little bit high. I'm going to bring my angle attack. I'm going to keep it right about here. Still seems like I'm a little bit high. This moving that you see is not the plane moving, it's the new shaky camera thing they got going. So if that confuses you, you can turn it off. I like it, so I just keep it on. It's not the plane. Remember that. It's not the plane going... It's just the funky-dory camera. So we need to go down just a tad more. Put my angle attack down before I lose some altitude. And there we go. I need to line up with that runway a little bit better, because we'll miss it completely, and that won't be good. Yeah, Kerbals don't like landing on grass. Bring that up a little bit more. It's pretty hard to mess up a landing. If you want to practice your landings, just F5 when you're entering and keep doing it until you get it right. If you want to keep practicing, so you don't have to do the whole mission over again. Landing gear down. Oh, we need to come down just a tad more. Tad more. We are lined up. We are lined up. We are good. We are good to go. Here we go. I am coming down at a crazy speed. But that's okay, because now we're going to hit this. And we're going to sort of, kinda land it well. Right? Right? Yes! That's usually bad. Uh-oh, this might be bad. Deployed. Alright. There we go. Brakes on. Oh, why is it on that? Is it really set like that? Interesting. Oh, did I accidentally set it to that? I don't know. Well, anyway, there you go, guys. Wasn't the perfect landing, but that's how you land. Again, Kerbal Space Program is pretty forgiving. That was actually my worst landing out of like the 7 I've done so far. And of course, the one I'm trying to record is the worst one, of course. But that's okay. I'm sure you guys understand. I taught you to get to space. Hopefully it helps you guys out. If not, then just keep trying. You'll eventually do it fine. Get those Rapier engines on there if you can get them. The save file does not have the Rapiers. It's the campaign game, so I cannot actually put the Rapiers on there. So I did it the hard way. This is the hard way. Trust me. Okay, guys? So, as always, thanks for watching. Hope this video helped you out. This is Malkuth, 1974. You guys have a great day and happy flying. Malkuth, out of here.